It was a bright summer afternoon, and the city's public pool was alive with the sound of laughter, splashing water, and excited chatter. Families had come out to enjoy the warm sun, and children ran along the edges of the pool, shrieking with joy as they jumped in and out. The air smelled faintly of sunscreen mixed with chlorine, a scent that immediately made anyone think of carefree summer days. Among the crowd, a group of friends had gathered near the shallow end, their colorful swimsuits reflecting the sunlight. One of them was a young girl, 12 years old, full of energy and excitement. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore bright goggles that made her eyes look even bigger as she scanned the pool for fun. She had been looking forward to this moment all week. School had been tiring, filled with exams and homework, and today was her escape. The second the car pulled into the parking lot and she saw the sparkling blue water, a wide smile spread across her face. She could hear the laughter of other kids echoing across the pool deck, and her heart beat faster with anticipation. Her friends were equally excited. One of them dared the group to race across the pool, while another challenged everyone to see who could do the highest jump into the water. The girl laughed and eagerly joined in, her feet sliding slightly on the wet tiles as she ran. The pool wasn't empty by any means. Families lounged on chairs, parents keeping a careful eye on their children, and lifeguards perched on their tall chairs, scanning the area with a mix of boredom and attentiveness. The lifeguard responsible for that section of the pool was a young man, maybe in his early 20s. He had recently been hired, and while he wore the uniform neatly and carried the whistle confidently, there was a noticeable tension in his movements. This was his first real summer job, and he was determined to look strict and in control. But his nerves sometimes got the better of him, making him act impulsively. He scanned the pool as usual, but his eyes lingered on the girl and her friends a little longer than necessary. They were laughing loudly, splashing water at each other and occasionally darting too close to the pool's edge. At first, he told himself it was normal. Kids will be kids, he thought. But the noise and energy made him impatient, and a small frustration started to build inside him. He wanted to assert his authority, to remind everyone that he was in charge of their safety. He blew his whistle sharply once, signaling for the group to tone down their antics. The girl paused for a moment, glancing at him with a mix of curiosity and mild annoyance. She didn't feel like she had done anything wrong, but she understood the gesture. Kids often got scolded at pools, and she had been through it before. After a moment, she and her friends went back to their game, now a little more careful, but still laughing and splashing each other. The lifeguard's eyes followed every move, and he seemed to grow more restless. Maybe it was the sun, maybe it was the crowd, but he suddenly felt the urge to make a statement, to show that he could control the situation. He leaned slightly forward, gripping the edge of his chair, scanning the girl's movements carefully. The girl didn't notice it, of course. She was too busy daring one of her friends to jump from the high side, clapping and cheering when her friend made a big splash. She had been practicing swimming all year, and her confidence in the water was high. She loved the feeling of floating, of letting her body glide through the cool water while the sun warmed her face. Today she felt unstoppable. Suddenly, without warning, the lifeguard stood up, his whistle hanging loosely around his neck. He walked toward the pool, eyes fixed on the girl. He didn't shout or make a big scene. Instead, he moved with a kind of quiet determination, the kind that made people notice but not immediately understand what was about to happen. The girl turned to wave at her friend, completely unaware of the lifeguard approaching from behind. Then, in a quick motion, he reached out and pushed her into the pool. It wasn't a gentle nudge or a playful shove. It was a sudden, forceful movement that sent her tumbling headfirst into the water. The splash was loud, water spraying into the faces of the nearby children who gasped in shock. For a moment, there was silence, as if the entire pool had paused to watch what just happened. The girl's face broke the surface, water dripping from her hair, her goggles askew. She coughed and sputtered, shocked and scared, her mind racing to understand what had just happened. She hadn't expected this. She had been playing, having fun, and suddenly she was submerged, completely at the mercy of the water. Her friends shouted her name, rushing to make sure she was okay. Parents leaned forward from their chairs, some frowning, some worried, trying to figure out if this was a normal mishap or something worse. The lifeguard stepped back, his chest heaving slightly. He didn't seem apologetic. Instead, he had a look of someone who thought he had done the right thing, A sense of authority mingled with pride. But the expressions around him told a different story. People were staring, shocked at his behavior, murmuring among themselves. Children were pointing, whispering, and parents were frowning in concern. He hadn't considered the consequences of his actions, and for the first time he felt a flicker of doubt. Across the pool, someone was watching. A tall man, clearly not part of the usual crowd, had been sitting with his children, enjoying a quiet afternoon. He had noticed the lifeguard's approach, the sudden shove, and the girl's startled reaction. His expression changed immediately from relaxed to serious. This was not the behavior of someone acting responsibly. He stood up slowly, his gaze fixed on the lifeguard, and began to walk toward the scene, his presence immediately noticeable. The girl, now recovering from the shock, climbed out of the pool with trembling hands. Her clothes were soaked, her hair plastered to her face, and her heart still raced. She felt a mixture of fear and anger, unsure why someone would treat her that way. Her friends gathered around her, offering comfort and support, holding her towel and helping her wipe the water from her eyes. The lifeguard, seeing her climb out, said something quickly, a half-hearted attempt at explanation, but it sounded weak and unconvincing. The tall man reached the edge of the pool, his calm but firm voice carrying across the water. He addressed the lifeguard directly, asking why he had done that. The lifeguard stammered, unable to come up with a reasonable answer. The man's presence seemed to make the truth even more obvious. The girl had been innocent, and the shove was completely unnecessary. The girl looked up at the man, confused at first, but then she realized he was there to support her. There was a sense of relief that washed over her. Someone important, someone strong and kind, was acknowledging what had happened and standing up for her. She felt a little less small, a little less scared, and a little more seen. Around them, the pool's atmosphere had changed. The excitement of summer fun had shifted to whispers of concern and curiosity. Parents were talking to each other, some frowning at the lifeguard, some nodding in agreement with the tall man. Children were quieter now, sensing that something serious had happened, even if they didn't fully understand it. The lifeguard, realizing that his actions were being judged by someone more than capable of holding him accountable, began to back away slightly. There was a flicker of fear in his eyes now, a recognition that this was bigger than a simple joke or attempt to show authority. He glanced around at the crowd, noticing the murmurs and disapproving looks, and for the first time he felt the weight of his actions. The girl, still wrapped in her towel, took a deep breath. She felt embarrassed, yes, but also empowered by the support around her. Her friends stood by her, and the tall man's calm, strong presence made her realize that she wasn't alone. Even though the incident had been shocking and unfair, she knew she would be okay. As the summer sun continued to shine over the pool, the atmosphere began to settle. People returned to their activities, though the lifeguard remained noticeably tense. The girl's laughter slowly returned, quieter this time, but genuine. She knew that the day would be remembered, not just for the fun of swimming and splashing, but for the moment she had faced something unexpected and unjust, and someone had stood up for her. It was just the beginning of a story that would teach lessons about courage, accountability, and the power of standing up for what is right. For now, though, the girl and her friends focused on enjoying the pool, cautious but still full of the summer's simple joys. The water sparkled under the sun, and the city's public pool remained a place of laughter, learning, and unforgettable moments. The splash of water still echoed in the girl's ears, a sharp reminder of what had just happened. She stood at the edge of the pool, dripping wet, her heart racing faster than it had all day. Her friends crowded around her, their faces filled with a mix of concern and disbelief. They couldn't understand why someone would push her into the water like that. She coughed a little, trying to shake off the water from her lungs, and tugged at her goggles, which had slipped crookedly across her face. For a moment it felt like time had slowed down. The lifeguard, who had moments ago acted with a sense of authority, now seemed smaller under the weight of everyone's stares. Parents were whispering, pointing fingers, and shaking their heads. Children were watching quietly, some gasping, some unsure of what to do. The girl's heart pounded with confusion, fear, and anger all at once. She wanted to cry, wanted to shout, but she didn't know where to start. Her friends tried to comfort her. One handed her a towel, wrapping it gently around her shoulders. Another rubbed her back, whispering, "It's okay, you're okay. Don't worry." The girl took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but the memory of being shoved into the pool kept replaying in her mind. It wasn't just the water, it was the suddenness. The feeling of someone deliberately trying to scare her, to make her feel small. Across the pool, the tall man who had noticed the incident began to approach more directly. He walked with a calm, steady pace, his eyes never leaving the lifeguard. There was a quiet authority in the way he moved, a presence that seemed to make people notice without him even saying a word. The girl looked up at him for the first time and realized he wasn't just any bystander. There was something about him that felt reassuring, almost protective. Her trembling slowed a little, and she felt a tiny spark of hope that someone would make sure this wasn't just brushed off. The lifeguard noticed the man's approach too, and his confidence began to waver. For the first time since he had shoved the girl, he realized that he wasn't in control. The man's calm eyes met his, and there was no need for words yet. The lifeguard understood that his actions were being judged, and the judgment was not in his favor. He tried to straighten his posture, grip the edge of his chair, and act as though everything was under control, but it was too late. The crowd's whispers and pointed glances made him feel smaller, and he knew there was no easy way out. The girl, wrapped in her towel, looked at the lifeguard with a mix of fear and defiance. She didn't fully understand why he had done it, but she knew it had been unfair and unnecessary. She could feel her anger rising, but it was tempered by the presence of the tall man approaching. She wasn't alone, and that made her feel braver. She glanced at her friends, who nodded encouragingly, their support giving her the strength to stand tall. The man reached the edge of the pool, kneeling slightly to get closer to the girl. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke to the lifeguard, asking, "Why did you push her into the pool?" His tone left no room for excuses. The lifeguard stammered, searching for words, but nothing sounded right. His attempt at a joke or a justification fell flat in the presence of the man's steady gaze. He realized quickly that the crowd was watching him too, that he was being held accountable in front of everyone. Parents nearby began to murmur louder, pointing out how reckless the lifeguard had been. Some were shaking their heads while others whispered advice to their own children about being careful around authority figures. The atmosphere of casual summer fun had shifted into a serious moment, a lesson unfolding in real time. The girl felt the attention on her, and for a moment she feared that she would be embarrassed in front of everyone. But the tall man's calm demeanor reassured her. She could feel that he was there to support her, not judge her, and that made her chest feel lighter. The lifeguard, now flustered, tried to mutter something about keeping the pool safe, or teaching her a lesson, but the words sounded hollow. The man's eyes didn't soften. They stayed fixed on him, silently demanding honesty and responsibility. The girl could see the tension in the lifeguard's shoulders, the way his hands trembled slightly as he tried to regain control. It was clear to her that he hadn't thought about the consequences of his actions. The crowd, which had been watching in hushed curiosity, began to react more openly. Some people called out gently, reminding the lifeguard that children shouldn't be treated this way. Others whispered to each other about what they had just witnessed, shaking their heads in disbelief. The girl could feel their support even though she didn't know most of these people. It was a strange feeling, realizing that strangers could recognize when something was wrong and stand silently on her side. The tall man spoke again, this time directly addressing the lifeguard with clear authority. He explained that pushing someone into the water as a form of discipline or a joke was completely inappropriate, especially in a professional setting. He emphasized the importance of respect, responsibility, and the safety of children. The lifeguard's face grew red, not from the sun but from embarrassment and guilt. He had acted without thinking, and now the consequences were becoming clear before his eyes. Meanwhile, the girl's friends continued to support her. They offered her water to drink, adjusted her towel, and stayed close, forming a protective circle around her. They whispered words of encouragement, telling her that it wasn't her fault and that she had done nothing wrong. Their presence made her feel braver, and she realized that the support of friends could make even the scariest moments a little easier to handle. The lifeguard finally spoke, his voice shaky and weak. He tried to apologize, but it sounded forced, as though he was more concerned with getting the attention off himself than truly acknowledging the girl's experience. The tall man listened carefully, shaking his head slightly. He told the lifeguard that a real apology required sincerity and understanding of the harm caused, not just empty words. The girl watched this exchange, learning an important lesson about accountability and the difference between saying sorry and truly meaning it. Around the pool, people began to return to their activities, but the atmosphere had changed. Children were quieter, more aware of their surroundings, and parents seemed more watchful. The incident had left a mark, a reminder that actions have consequences, and that adults in positions of responsibility need to act with care. The girl, still dripping from the pool, felt a mix of relief and pride. She had faced a frightening situation, and someone had stood up for her. She was beginning to understand that courage could come from unexpected places, and that speaking up or having someone speak up could make a difference. The tall man knelt beside the girl, speaking to her softly now. He reassured her that she had nothing to be ashamed of, that she had done nothing wrong, and that it was the lifeguard who needed to learn from this moment. His words were simple but powerful, giving her a sense of validation she hadn't felt since being shoved into the water. She listened intently, feeling her fear gradually melt away, replaced by a quiet confidence. As the lifeguard stepped back, the man gave him a final warning. He explained that there would be consequences if such behavior happened again, and that children's safety should always come first. The lifeguard nodded, now fully aware of the seriousness of the situation, and the weight of the lesson began to sink in. The girl's friends helped her climb out of the pool completely, wrapping her in towels and helping her sit on a nearby bench to dry off. She felt a mix of emotions: fear, embarrassment, anger, and relief. But most importantly, she felt supported. For the first time since being pushed, she realized that the day hadn't been ruined. She had faced something unfair and had come through it stronger, with people who cared about her well-being standing by her side. The crowd around them slowly dispersed, resuming their summer activities, but the moment left a lasting impression. Children watched more carefully, parents stayed a little closer to their kids, and the lifeguard remained under scrutiny, his actions now clearly recognized as wrong. The girl looked around at the pool, seeing it with new eyes. It wasn't just a place for fun anymore. It was a place where responsibility and respect mattered, where courage could be shown in unexpected ways. By the time the girl and her friends left the pool, the sun was beginning to dip slightly in the sky, casting a golden glow over the water. She felt tired but empowered, a sense of strength building inside her. She knew that summer would continue, that there would be more fun and laughter, but she also knew that she had learned something important. She had faced a challenge, been supported by someone who cared, and witnessed the power of standing up for what is right. Even though the day had started like any other, it had turned into a story she would remember for a long time. A story of courage, support, and the importance of speaking up. The girl felt proud, not just for surviving the incident, but for realizing that even in scary moments, there were people who would stand beside her, helping her find her voice and strength. The sun was still high in the sky, casting warm golden light across the busy public pool. The laughter and splashing of children had returned, but the earlier incident left a quiet tension in the air. The young girl, still wrapped in her towel, sat on a bench near the poolside. Her friends hovered close, speaking in low whispers, making sure she felt safe. She could still feel her heart racing from what had happened, the memory of being shoved into the pool fresh in her mind. The tall man, who had quietly and confidently intervened earlier, remained close by. He had noticed that the girl was shaken even if she tried to hide it, and he wanted to make sure she understood she was not at fault. He knelt down beside her, speaking in a gentle, calm voice. "It's okay," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people make mistakes, and it's their actions we need to question, not yours." The girl looked up at him, still unsure of what to say. She had expected anger or yelling, but instead she saw kindness and understanding. His presence was reassuring in a way that felt almost magical. She could feel her fear slowly easing, replaced by a sense of being seen and heard. She nodded quietly, feeling her chest expand a little as if taking a deep breath of courage. The lifeguard, on the other hand, remained tense and uncertain. He had stepped back, his earlier bravado gone, replaced by a nervous awareness of his mistake. The tall man stood and addressed him directly, but without yelling or intimidation. His words were firm but fair. "You need to understand that children are not punishable for having fun. Your job is to keep them safe, not to scare them or force them into the water. You need to apologize sincerely and learn from this." The lifeguard swallowed hard, his throat tight, and muttered an apology. It sounded forced at first, lacking true understanding. But the tall man didn't accept empty words. He continued, speaking directly to the lifeguard while the girl and her friends listened. A real apology comes from understanding the harm caused and taking responsibility. You can't just say sorry and move on. You need to show that you mean it and that you will do better. The girl felt a strange sense of relief as she watched the exchange. Someone was holding the lifeguard accountable, not in anger but in a way that demanded fairness and respect. It was empowering to see that actions had consequences, and that standing up for what is right could make a difference. She realized that this moment was bigger than her. It was about teaching everyone present the importance of responsibility and respect. Nearby, parents and other children began to watch more attentively. The pool, which had returned to its usual summer chaos, now felt like a classroom where a valuable lesson was unfolding. People whispered among themselves, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads in disbelief at what had happened. The girl felt a sense of solidarity from the crowd, even though most of them were strangers. It reminded her that sometimes support comes from unexpected places. The lifeguard's demeanor changed slowly. He looked down at his feet, embarrassed and remorseful. His earlier confidence had vanished, replaced by a growing awareness of the mistake he had made. He realized that he had let his emotions and desire for control get the better of him. The tall man continued to speak, not harshly but with a clarity that left no room for misunderstanding. Your role is to protect, not to dominate. You have a responsibility to the children here, and that includes making sure they feel safe and respected at all times. The girl listened carefully, absorbing every word. She felt a sense of justice in the way the tall man spoke. There was no need for theatrics or anger, just calm, firm guidance and protection. She felt a little braver, knowing that someone had recognized the wrong done to her and was making sure it was corrected. Her friends continued to comfort her, holding her towel tightly around her shoulders and whispering supportive words in her ear. After a moment, the tall man turned his attention back to the girl. He smiled gently, crouching down to her level again. "It's okay to feel scared or upset," he said. "What happened wasn't fair, and it's normal to feel those emotions. But you should also know that standing up, even indirectly, matters. By being yourself and letting someone step in, you showed courage." The girl looked at him, a small smile forming on her face. She hadn't realized it at the time, but she had been brave. She had been thrown into a situation she didn't deserve, yet she had handled it with composure even if her heart had been pounding. The tall man's words gave her validation, making her feel proud in a way she hadn't expected. The lifeguard, now fully aware of the seriousness of his actions, finally took a step toward the girl. He spoke in a quieter, more sincere tone. I'm really sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have done that. I realize it was wrong, and I promise to do better." It was clear that his apology came from a place of understanding now, influenced by the calm authority and presence of the tall man. The girl nodded slowly. She accepted the apology, not out of necessity, but because she could see he truly understood his mistake. There was a sense of closure forming, a recognition that while the incident had been frightening, it had also led to a lesson in accountability and responsibility. She felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As the day went on, the atmosphere at the pool began to normalize. Children returned to their games, laughing and splashing, but with a renewed sense of awareness. Parents kept a closer eye on their kids, and the lifeguard remained cautious, more attentive to his role than before. He watched the children, not as a figure of authority to be feared, but as a protector, understanding the importance of his responsibility. The tall man stayed nearby, observing quietly. He didn't need to speak anymore. His presence alone was enough to influence the environment positively. The girl and her friends returned to the poolside, still wrapped in towels but smiling more freely now. She felt a sense of security, knowing that someone had intervened and that fairness had been restored. Her friends began to joke lightly again, teasing each other about who could make the biggest splash or swim the fastest. The girl joined in, feeling a spark of the joy she had felt earlier before the incident. She realized that moments of fear and uncertainty could pass, especially when support and kindness were present. The day was far from over, and there was still fun to be had, lessons to be learned, and laughter to share. The lifeguard continued to patrol the pool, but his eyes were sharper, more aware of the children and their activities. He seemed changed, a little more humble, a little more cautious, and a little more understanding of what his role truly meant. The tall man watched from a distance, satisfied that the situation had been handled appropriately, his calm intervention leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. For the girl, the rest of the afternoon passed with a mixture of fun and reflection. She swam with her friends, laughing and splashing, but also carrying a quiet pride in the way she had faced the incident. She had been thrown into an unexpected situation, yet she had survived it with grace, supported by people who cared and guided by someone who understood the importance of standing up for what was right. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the pool deck, the girl felt a sense of calm. The day had started like any other, filled with excitement and anticipation. But it had turned into something much more, a lesson about courage, accountability, and the power of support. She realized that sometimes it wasn't just the fun or games that mattered in life. It was the moments when people showed kindness, stood up for fairness, and guided others toward doing the right thing. The tall man finally began to leave with his children, waving quietly at the girl and her friends. The girl waved back, a genuine smile spreading across her face. She felt a sense of gratitude, not just for his intervention, but for the lesson embedded in the day's events. She understood that courage could come from unexpected places, that mistakes could be corrected with sincerity, and that standing up for fairness was always worthwhile. By the time the girl and her friends left the pool, the sky had begun to turn shades of orange and pink. The memory of the incident, once frightening and confusing, had transformed into a story of empowerment. She had faced something unfair, been supported by someone strong and kind, and witnessed accountability in action. She felt ready for whatever challenges might come next, confident that she could face them with courage and integrity. The day at the pool had been more than just a summer afternoon. It had become a story she would remember forever. A story of fear, courage, accountability, and the kindness of strangers who stepped in when it mattered most. It was a lesson not only for her but for everyone watching, that standing up for what is right, being responsible, and supporting those who are vulnerable could create a ripple effect, leaving a lasting impact on everyone involved. After the incident, the city's public pool slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the events of the afternoon left a mark that could not be ignored. The young girl, still feeling a mix of relief and lingering fear, sat on a bench with her friends wrapped in towels and quietly talking about what had happened. Her heart still thumped with a combination of excitement, fear, and pride. She had faced a frightening situation, been shoved into the pool unfairly, and had someone stand up for her. The memory of that moment was strong, and it carried a lesson that she was only beginning to understand. The lifeguard, now fully aware of the seriousness of his actions, had been called aside by the pool management. He was asked to review security footage of the incident, and the realization of his mistake weighed heavily on him. For the first time, he felt the full impact of what he had done, not just the embarrassment of being called out in front of the crowd, but the knowledge that he had hurt a child emotionally and physically. His training and instincts had failed, replaced by an impulsive need to assert control, and now he had to face the consequences. The management of the pool began an investigation into the lifeguard's behavior. They reviewed the footage, spoke with witnesses, and asked him to explain why he had pushed the girl into the water. The young girl and her friends were asked to give their accounts as well. The process was calm but serious, emphasizing the importance of truth and accountability. The girl felt nervous at first, unsure if her words would be taken seriously. But as she recounted what happened, she realized that her voice mattered. The staff listened attentively, acknowledging her feelings and concerns, and that made her feel empowered. The lifeguard, seeing the process unfold, understood that apologies alone were not enough. His actions required a response that showed real responsibility. He was suspended immediately, with the possibility of permanent termination depending on the results of the investigation. Additionally, he was instructed to attend sensitivity and professional training, to learn the importance of respecting and protecting children in his care. The weight of his mistake settled on him, and he began to grasp the seriousness of his impulsive behavior. Meanwhile, the young girl's confidence began to recover. She could see that justice was being served, and the support she had received earlier strengthened her sense of self. Her friends continued to cheer her on quietly, reminding her that she was brave and strong. She realized that being treated unfairly didn't define her. The way she responded and the support she received helped shape her experience into something meaningful rather than just frightening. The incident also became a topic of conversation among the pool-goers. Parents, staff, and other children began discussing what had happened, emphasizing the importance of safety and respect. Many parents shared their own experiences, explaining to their children why it's important to treat others kindly and responsibly. The girl listened quietly, understanding that her experience could teach others a valuable lesson about fairness and accountability. She felt proud knowing that something positive could come from such a scary moment. Outside the pool, the lifeguard's actions began to draw attention from the larger community. The pool management shared the incident with local authorities and community groups to emphasize the importance of proper training and supervision for staff. This created awareness about children's safety and the responsibilities of those entrusted with it. The young girl's story, though small in scale, became a reminder of how even seemingly minor acts could have serious consequences. Back at the pool, the young girl continued to enjoy the water. Though she was more careful now, she swam with her friends, raced across the shallow end, and laughed as they splashed each other. Her confidence had grown, not just because the lifeguard had been held accountable, but because she had realized that she could handle unexpected challenges. Each stroke in the water became a little victory, a reminder that fear could be overcome with courage and support. The tall man who had intervened earlier, Dwayne Johnson, remained a quiet but influential figure in her memory. Though he was no longer present at the pool, his actions had left a lasting impression. She understood that standing up for fairness didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes it meant being observant, speaking calmly, and guiding others toward the right choice. His intervention had shown her that kindness and accountability could make a real difference in people's lives. Over the next few days, the girl's story began to resonate with those around her. Teachers, friends, and neighbors spoke about her bravery and the importance of speaking up when something feels wrong. She realized that sharing her experience could help others, encouraging them to trust their instincts and seek support when needed. The incident had transformed from a frightening event into a lesson about courage, responsibility, and community support. The lifeguard, during his suspension, reflected on his actions deeply. He thought about how a simple moment of carelessness had caused harm, embarrassment, and fear. He began to understand the importance of his role and the trust placed in him by the community. The training he attended helped him learn not only about professional responsibilities but also about empathy, communication, and the emotional impact of his actions. By the time he was allowed to return to work, he was a changed person, aware of the seriousness of his responsibilities and committed to being a better guardian for the children in his care. Meanwhile, the girl's relationship with her friends strengthened. They had been her support system during the incident, helping her feel safe and valued. They laughed together again, shared stories, and encouraged each other in games and races in the pool. These simple moments became more meaningful as they symbolized resilience, friendship, and the joy of overcoming fear. The city's community began to recognize the importance of such incidents in shaping awareness about children's safety. Pool management and local organizations started implementing additional safety measures, emphasizing training for lifeguards and staff, and encouraging clear communication with children and parents. The young girl's experience, though personal, contributed to a wider change, helping make the pool safer for everyone. By the end of the week, the girl felt a renewed sense of confidence. She returned to the pool with her friends, ready to enjoy the summer without fear. She could laugh freely again, dive into the water, and race across the pool with energy and joy. Her heart felt lighter, and she knew that she had faced a challenge, learned from it, and come out stronger. The memory of being shoved into the pool remained, but it no longer caused fear. Instead, it became a reminder of the importance of standing up, of accountability, and of kindness. She understood that even when things go wrong, support from others can make a world of difference. She felt grateful for the people who had helped her, for the lessons learned, and for the courage she discovered within herself. The lifeguard, now back on duty after completing his training, approached his work with a new mindset. He treated the children with patience, attentiveness, and care. He remembered the young girl's face the moment he had made a mistake, and he let it guide him toward being a better professional. The pool, once marked by an incident of unfairness, began to feel safer and more welcoming for all children. The girl continued to visit the pool throughout the summer, each day filled with laughter, games, and the joy of swimming. She remembered the day she had been pushed not as a moment of fear, but as a turning point. It was a day that taught her about courage, responsibility, and the importance of support from friends and strangers alike. She had learned that fairness and accountability mattered, and that standing up for what is right could make a real difference. By the time summer was ending, the girl felt more confident and aware than ever before. She had faced an unexpected challenge, experienced fear, witnessed accountability, and emerged stronger. The pool had become not just a place for fun, but a place of learning and growth. She carried these lessons with her, understanding that life would present challenges, but that courage, support, and fairness could help her navigate them successfully. In the end, the incident that had seemed so frightening and unfair had transformed into a story of empowerment. The girl had faced fear, received support from others, and witnessed accountability in action. The lifeguard had learned a valuable lesson, and the community had grown more aware of the importance of safety and responsibility. Through it all, the young girl discovered her own strength, resilience, and the value of standing up for what is right. The summer days were slowly coming to an end, but the memory of what had happened at the pool that afternoon remained fresh in the young girl's mind. It was no longer a memory of fear or embarrassment, though. Instead, it had transformed into something stronger, a memory of courage, growth, and the kindness of those who had stood beside her when she needed it most. She reflected quietly on the events, realizing that the incident had taught her far more than she could have imagined. Even now, months later, she could still picture the moment when the lifeguard had pushed her into the pool. The splash, the sudden shock, and the quick rush of fear had been intense, but the moment was no longer overwhelming. She had learned something essential, that even in moments of fear, support could change everything. The man who had intervened, the calm authority in his voice and the way he had guided the situation had left a lasting impression on her. It wasn't just that he had helped her. It was that he had shown her the power of standing up for what is right, even in small ways. The girl had grown more confident since that day. She realized that being treated unfairly or encountering fear didn't define her. It was how she responded and how others supported her that mattered most. She thought about her friends who had stayed close, offered comfort, and reminded her that she wasn't alone. Their support had made a huge difference. She began to understand the value of friendship and loyalty in real, tangible ways. The community around the pool had also changed. The incident had prompted discussions about safety, respect, and responsibility. Pool management had implemented new guidelines and additional training for staff, ensuring that no child would face the same fear she had experienced. Parents and children alike became more aware of their surroundings, fostering an environment of care and accountability. The girl felt proud that something positive had emerged from such a challenging experience. Her story, though personal, had sparked awareness and growth for many others. The lifeguard, now returned to his duties after completing professional training, approached his work differently. The sense of responsibility and awareness he had gained from the incident made him more attentive and careful. He treated each child in the pool with respect and patience, understanding that his role was not just about enforcing rules, but about creating a safe and positive environment. The girl had witnessed this change, and it reminded her that people could learn from mistakes and genuinely improve. One sunny afternoon, the girl returned to the pool with her friends, feeling completely at ease. The water sparkled under the sunlight, children laughed and splashed around her, and the atmosphere was alive with summer energy. She dove into the pool, her movements confident, her strokes smooth and determined. Each splash and laugh carried a sense of freedom, a reassurance that the past no longer had the power to control her. She could enjoy the moment fully, knowing she had the strength to overcome fear. As she swam, she thought about the lessons she had learned. She realized that courage didn't always mean taking big, dramatic actions. Sometimes it was simply having the strength to face a difficult moment, to accept support from others, and to speak up when something was wrong. She thought about the man who had stepped in calmly without anger or shouting, and the way he had guided the lifeguard toward accountability. His actions had taught her that leadership and courage often came in quiet, steady forms. The girl also thought about her friends. They had been her support system through the entire incident, offering comfort, encouragement, and understanding. She realized how valuable friendship could be, especially during challenging times. Their loyalty and care had reminded her that no one needed to face difficulty alone. This understanding strengthened her bond with them and helped her see the importance of being supportive to others as well. Over time, the girl began to share her story more openly. She spoke about it with family, teachers, and even classmates. She explained what had happened, how she had felt, and what she had learned from the experience. People listened, and many were inspired by her courage and the lessons she had learned. Some parents even used her story to teach their own children about respect, accountability, and standing up for fairness. The girl realized that sharing her experience could help others, turning a personal challenge into a broader lesson. The lifeguard's mistake, though initially frightening, had become a turning point for the girl and those around her. She saw that mistakes could be opportunities for growth, that accountability could lead to positive change, and that courage and kindness could create ripples far beyond a single moment. She no longer thought of the incident as just a scary memory. Instead, it had become a story of empowerment and resilience. Even the small moments at the pool carried meaning now. When she dived into the water, she remembered the fear she had faced and felt proud of her courage. When she watched her friends laugh and play, she appreciated their loyalty and support even more. Each moment of fun was intertwined with a sense of learning and growth. The pool, which had once been the scene of a frightening incident, had become a place of joy, safety, and empowerment. The girl also reflected on the importance of accountability. She understood that standing up for what is right wasn't always easy, but it mattered. The lifeguard's apology, his willingness to learn, and the pool's response had all shown her that fairness and responsibility could create real change. She realized that people could make mistakes, but acknowledging them and working to improve was what truly defined character. As summer faded and school approached again, the girl carried these lessons with her. She felt stronger, more confident, and aware of her own ability to face challenges. The incident at the pool was no longer a source of fear or embarrassment. Instead, it was a symbol of her growth, her courage, and the kindness of those who had supported her. She knew that life would present challenges in the future, but she felt ready to face them with confidence, knowing that support, accountability, and courage could guide her through anything. Her friends continued to play and laugh with her, sharing stories of their own small victories and challenges. The girl felt a deep sense of gratitude for their presence in her life. She realized that support wasn't just about helping in scary moments. It was about sharing everyday joys, learning together, and being there for each other consistently. This understanding deepened her appreciation for friendship and strengthened her bonds with those around her. The lessons she had learned extended beyond the pool. She began to approach situations in school and life with a new perspective. She understood the importance of speaking up when something was wrong, of being supportive to others, and of facing fear with courage. She became more aware of her surroundings, more empathetic to the feelings of others, and more confident in her ability to navigate challenges. The experience had shaped her, leaving a lasting impact that went far beyond the events of a single afternoon. The girl also remembered the calm, firm presence of the man who had intervened. Though he was no longer at the pool, his actions had left a permanent impression. She understood that leadership and courage could take many forms, not always loud or dramatic, but steady, thoughtful, and firm. His intervention had shown her that sometimes the simplest actions could have the most profound impact, and that standing up for fairness and kindness could change lives. Over time, the girl found herself sharing the story with younger children at the pool. She encouraged them to trust their instincts, to speak up when they felt something was wrong, and to support each other. She wanted them to know that fear could be faced and overcome, and that kindness and accountability mattered. By sharing her experience, she turned a personal challenge into a lesson that could help others, extending the impact of the day far beyond what she had imagined. By the end of the summer, the girl felt transformed. She had faced fear, experienced injustice, witnessed accountability, and received support from friends and strangers alike. She had learned valuable lessons about courage, fairness, responsibility, and the power of standing up for what is right. The pool had become more than a place for fun. It had become a place of growth, learning, and empowerment. The girl knew that the experience would stay with her for the rest of her life. She had faced something unexpected and frightening, and she had come through it stronger, braver, and more aware. She had discovered the power of support, the importance of accountability, and the value of courage. Her story, once a moment of fear, had transformed into a source of inspiration for herself and for others. As the sun set on the last days of summer, the girl stood by the edge of the pool, looking out over the water. She thought about everything she had learned, everything she had experienced, and everything she had overcome. She felt a deep sense of pride in herself, gratitude for her friends, and appreciation for those who had guided and supported her. She knew that life would present challenges, but she felt ready to face them, confident in her courage, her voice, and the lessons she had learned that unforgettable summer.